What up? This is Sean, Lonegevity with the New Old Heads podcast, and welcome to episode 435, where we had guest Brother to the Night on as Maja 7 was out. We had conversations this week about Outkast and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and also if Southern Playalistic is the most important album in the South's rise to prominence. We also talked about Ninth Wonder and his comments about creating futuristic nostalgia with working with some OGs in hip hop. We also talked about a video by Read My Soul where he talked about how hip hop is more conscious than street, and also the difference in street rappers today versus, in the past and all that. And we ended everything talking about a Culture United clip where Glasses Malone and Wayno went back and forth talking about classifying certain things as hip hop when maybe it shouldn't be, such as Playboi Carti or Travis Scott or Lil Uzi Vert, and if there's a different classification for it or if it's disrespectful and that whole conversation around it. The whole 2-hour show is on our Patreon, so if you really want to support the show, please go check that out. It's $5 a month. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any type of app that has a rating system and you haven't done so, please leave us a rating. It doesn't take very long. It helps us a ton. Yeah, so let's get into episode 435. Peace.
You're listening to the New Old Heads podcast, shot live every Tuesday at twitch.tv/newoldheads and released every Thursday at noon via bringingdowntheband.com. The show is brought to you by Coleman Dental, Indie CD and Vinyl. Support the show directly by becoming a member at patreon.com/newoldheads.
Welcome to the New Old Heads podcast. I am Lonegevity, and I forgot that Mike isn't here.
I did too, because I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. To my right here, we have Jay Moore in the building.
Yes, I'm here.
And Jay Diff is on the other side.
Salutations.
And special guest, Brother to the Night.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
You guys all look so colorful, and there's me.
Yeah, I wore color today. Got some blue on.
Yeah, it looks nice. Everybody looks nice.
Yes, fresh off a Pacers win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Fresh.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
man. Get them bucks up
I'm
out
so
here.
proud to be any animal.
Is Atlanta's Outkast really that important to hip hop? Not my words, Maja 7's words. I just want to let that be known. So Outkast has been announced that they will be in the 2025 class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees this November. So without the foundation that was laid by Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik, there would be no Outkast, right? But the bar that they set for themselves and for others helped push not only their own music, but also the entire Southern hip-hop movement forward. First of all, what are your thoughts on Outkast being in the Hall of Fame? Then we'll talk about that others piece.
Don't doubt them, crown them. Yeah, they deserve it. Yeah, they should deserve to be first ballot.
Yeah.
As far as hip-hop goes.
I think as far as musical, period, Outkast their success is so crazy, especially where they started from. Because I can attest being somebody to listen to them from day one on a Christmas album. Like, I can't wait till they actually drop an album.
Yeah.
And the album lived up to my expectations or standards that I had as a teenager. And then for them to go on and become as successful as they did, I think, are they the only rap group that has a diamond album?
No idea.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I could be right or wrong, but they have a diamond album. And their
Doesn't
catalog,
Will Smith have a diamond album?
I think they're the only to win album of the year.
Yeah, they definitely.
No,
are
the group. They're individuals who have diamond albums.
Yeah.
But
But as a group, yeah. But I mean, their catalog speaks for itself. They really don't have any duds, and sonically they pushed the
Elevated every
envelope
time.
and pretty much took their influence from A Tribe Called Quest and took it to a whole nother level. So yeah, I think it's warranted that they got in on the first ballot.
because I'm that person that bought every Outkast album, and probably Southern Playalistic. We talked about buying albums multiple times. That's one of those ones that I might have worn it out. Somebody might have stole it. And I've had no problem buying it again.
Mm-hmm.
I did have to look up the requirements because, a lot of times when we think about Hall of Fame, we think about sports, and you have to be 5 years removed from your last game or whatever, from your retirement. For the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's 25 years after basically your first full-length LP comes out.
see.
Okay, so they deserve it. I think they have a solid body of work, the awards, the respect and the recognition from their peers and, critics, to where it is something that they deserve. The only thing is, like, sometimes I can make arguments other people need to be in.
Before them?
Yes. I feel like almost Tribe and De La should have almost walked in together. I think, and of course, like
Tribe did get in though, didn't it?
Tribe's in.
Okay.
Tribe's in. But that's neither here nor there because I shouldn't use that as a reason to take away from what Outkast clearly deserves.
You know, the frustrating thing about me that I feel about it is like, because I know KRS-One used to say it all the time, like, look, hip hop deserves their own Hall of Fame. Like, we're giving them hella accolades or whatever, but we're giving them accolades to going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we're happy that they're being accepted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they're hip hop acts.
I mean, but Rock and Roll Hall of Fame literally accepts all musicians, though. So that's pretty much like the pinnacle or your stamp on what you did as a music artist is to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I get it. I mean, it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I mean, culturally, they're from the lineage that created rock and roll. If you want to be technical about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then some of those sounds evolved into hip hop. I mean, there's a lot of, you know what I'm saying, 7 degrees of separation that you could point back to why I'm cool with it being the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame versus let's just have a hip hop Hall of Fame. I mean, and you can do that too, but in the same token, I think it, from a culture experience, for you to be able to go and see all of these great artists in the same exact area that you might, if you're not just in tune to one type of music, that you might want to be introduced to something else. I think it makes sense from that. And I don't think it's a situation to where they would actually change the name of the location just to embrace more musicians.
I don't understand our need to segregate ourselves.
But that would be segregated.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I asked that question, but I don't know. I don't understand why I do that sometimes. You know what I mean? The importance of, look, we have to separate ourselves from that. You know what I mean?
Well, I think, you know, when I say De La Soul should be in, you know, the people who make those decisions as far as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
probably ain't hip to them like that.
I guarantee you they aren't. You know, like, I think, you know, it was a big deal when
I bet they are.
They put
they don't recognize their importance to be on the same level.
I mean,
as
I don't know who's on this panel.
Yeah, I mean, like
list,
without
you
knowing
know,
who's, but I just think that.
But if Tribe's getting in, I guarantee you somebody on there knows who De La Soul is.
You know, I think they just added De La Soul's name to like the Gorilla song. Remember they did this song with the Gorillas, and it was like, oh, and then it shot up a certain amount of percent just having the attachment. It was like, oh, this is also a De La Soul record, you know, or collaboration, if you will. When you talk about maybe a hip hop award specifically, there are people who, just because of the mainstream nature of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if you will, are just going to be left out. You know, they're not ever going to be recognized. You know, it's going to be hard for like someone to make a case for the Ultramagnetic MCs. You know, who was influential on De La Soul. You know, so I think that's where the argument comes into play. Like maybe we should have our own. One of the things that I thought was dope was when there was the VH1 Hip Hop Honors. You know, there was something where I'm like, okay, this is specifically about hip hop. You know, I don't think Big Daddy Kane is going to make it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but you know, he was honored through the VH1 Hip Hop Honors.
Well, I mean, BET, the Hip Hop Awards.
I don't know if that counts at this point. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is. I mean, like you can barely even get the top people in hip hop to go. You know?
And that's the thing that really frustrates me when it comes to like the award shows that we do for ourselves. You know what I mean? Like they're not important enough. Like people put more emphasis. They put more emphasis and more status on a Grammy as opposed to a Soul Train award or
an Image award.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's frustrating, man. But
I think part of the reason too has been the actual production of those shows haven't been up to par like they were in the past. Now, like if you think about even the BET Hip Hop Awards, it's
cartoonish.
It's not a event that everybody's about to get real fly and go to, and you know what I'm saying. It almost turned into a caricature or parody of what it originally was. Like the only time I usually watch it is to see what the cipher is going to be. and a
they
lot of the
ain't been
artists,
nothing for quite some time.
Yeah, there's so many artists. So what I can G for is if there was a situation or an award show for artists that are from like the underground or just not as well known artists. There's a lot more good of them than there are bad of the ones that are in the mainstream.
An award show, we can put as much stock into it or as little or as much as we want. But as far as Outkast is concerned, not really making music anymore together. They've retired that a long time ago. They've meet the criteria. They're a legendary group from the South, so I don't really see a problem with it in that framing. Is Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik the most important album in the South's rise in hip-hop?
I don't know about the most important, but I will say this.
Well, rise in hip-hop.
The rise in hip-hop.
I think that's key in that particular statement.
The only reason why I think it has some merit is based off of them winning that Source Award. Mm-hmm. And what Andre said put a battery in the South's back. South got something to say. Because everybody that was there pretty much was kind of like, Outkast. Like, you know what I'm saying? How did they win this award?
Ew.
And they showed you exactly why they won the award. Yep. Now, if I have to personally dig for Southern classics that I think would be a monumental push for hip hop in general, that would be one of the
Not a
albums
push
included.
for hip hop, Southern hip hop.
Well, Southern hip hop, that would be included. Yeah.
I will say yes, because it gave the South, or it gave Atlanta a sound. You know what I mean? Because prior to that, Atlanta's sound as far as hip hop was booty shake music, you know what I mean?
From Miami, essentially.
Yeah. And it was kind of like when you think about like Atlanta music in general, you was getting Dallas Austin, you know what I mean? And they sounded like knockoff Public Enemy records, you know what I mean?
Dallas Austin sounds like a wrestler's name.
Diamond Dallas
like
Page.
him and Jermaine Dupri, you know what I mean? At that time, those records that they were doing, they sounded like those TLC records. Those were great records, but they sounded like East Coast records for the most part. You know, even ABC.
Yeah, I can see that.
You gotta say Crisscross first because.
Well, yeah, Crisscross, but
you gotta say ABC before Crisscross.
Yeah,
Crisscross was first.
No, remember,
ABC was first.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because go ahead.
Hell, what's the name? They called themselves the East Coast Family with ABC. You know what I mean? Like those all sounded like East Coast records, but then here comes Outkast, and it gives Atlanta a completely different sound. You know what I mean? And they wore Atlanta on their shirt proud. You know what I mean? Like, look, we from Atlanta.
Yeah,
we from the South. Not to say that the Ghetto Boys or Ball and G, they all had records before then, but Outkast put Southern hip hop on the mainstream platform.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard for me to see how it put everything on the main platform because being from Indianapolis, Indiana, we came up on Southern music, period. Mm-hmm. So like even before Outkast, I'm listening to Ghetto Boys. I'm listening to Scarface. I'm listening to everybody from the South already. UGK, you know what I'm saying? I'm listening to all these artists already. And then this happened to be another Southern artist that I gravitated to and I really rock with. I think that's why I don't see which one made everybody else pay attention to the South. But when you single it out to Atlanta and the examples that you gave, I get that does make sense.
Yeah, I think so
from
too.
an Atlanta point of view. Yeah.
Especially for what Atlanta has become. Yeah. Just perpetual state of movement. What do you think, Jay?
I think that while they were influenced by a Tribe Called Quest, they weren't trying to be a Tribe Called Quest. And it also showed, hey, not only can we be ourselves, we can be ourselves and sell a lot of records. And honestly, it was crazy. Like I said, everybody who really knows that first Outkast song, we heard it on the LaFace Christmas album. And the wild thing is, like, LaFace was not known for hip hop at all. This was, LA and Babyface. So they are dyed-in-the-wool traditional, songwriters and producers for R&B.
From the Midwest.
Exactly. Indiana and Cincinnati. So for them to have the, foresight to sign these guys who are basically making music in a clay floor basement in Atlanta really says something for, you know, their ability to see the future and be like, okay, well, we're going to go with these guys. And then then the guys they want to bring along with them with Goody Mob, we're going to sign them too.
So with that being said, even though Outkast is being entered into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, with my last statement, I can only really say Organized Noise is being entered in because that's who created that sound. Like,
absolutely.
You know,
but you have to have somebody be able to take that sound somewhere else other than just having, you know what I'm saying? Because even before Outkast, didn't Organized Noise do stuff with other people? Or with LaFace before Outkast got on?
Probably.
Weren't they pretty much the pinnacle that introduced them to Outkast?
I don't remember. I feel like somebody had a relationship with the record label, but I don't know if that was Rico.
Rico could be wrong.
Rico was cool with T-Boz.
Okay, yeah.
And T-Boz is the one that turned them on to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that part of the story.
But yeah, Organized Noise is very instrumental in that Atlanta sound. Even as a producer team, nobody ever heard anything that sounded like that.
Yeah. Let's stay in the South. So, Ninth Wonder talks about creating futuristic nostalgia. So, in a recent interview on Drink Champs, the legendary producer Ninth Wonder talked about his unique approach in producing Smith & Wesson's February 2025 release entitled Infinity. So, let's play this little clip here, and then we will talk further.
I have the task of how do I keep their sound and keep their feeling, but make it futuristic. I call it futuristic nostalgia. That's what I call it. To keep that feeling, that brand, because Smith & Wesson is a brand. It's not only a sound, it's a look, it's you know, the Timbs, everything. So how do I keep that futuristic and modern at the same time, not lose the fans that they've had for years? Like, I think that people mess up when they do that. They just forget the old fans. You can't forget that's the foundation. You can't do that. So me living in North Carolina, I still live around the people I went to college with. I know what they like, and I know how to make what they need. So I sit in this position of I want to hear, or what a fan in me wants to hear. So that's how I can tackle that.
Question posed here, and shout out to Maja 7th, who's not here, but he posed the question, why don't more producers take this approach sonically when working with older artists? And I added, do they?
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't know very many quote unquote producers that work with older artists anymore. You know what I mean? The super producers now, like, because Ninth is not really a super producer right now. You know what I mean? That's why he's working with older artists. Respectfully, Ninth, I respect you and your art, man.
I think Ninth could probably work with almost anybody at this point, though. I would give him that. I know where Mike is coming from with this question because, like, we talk about all the time about, like, oh, that's the updated kit. And, you know, like, there's certain producers where when they produce records, it sounds like 1997 or 1995. And some producers that are from that era sound like themselves, but just like a modernized version of it. I would say Pete Rock has done generally a pretty good job of, like, updating his version as he's worked with, like, Common and Smoke DZA and stuff like that with his sound. But then you have, like, younger producers that are producing that sound as well, but they weren't necessarily, they're children from that era. So if you think like a Crisis, Knots was around back in those days. Knots, a lot of the Soul Council people, to be honest, you know, Soundtrack and stuff like that. You have the DJ Dahis, there's a lot Soundwave, you know, but they have they're not like traditionally 90s necessarily, but there are some people like Soundtrack and like Crisis that can make that 90s sound, but it sounds new and it sounds like fresh. And there's a lot of people out there doing that. But to answer the question, I don't know why more producers, the question's worded a little, why don't more producers take this approach? I think it would be better to say, why don't older artists work with producers that can do that more often? And that's a very interesting question to know, like, is it just relationship based? You know, because Ninth has this relationship with Smith & Wesson and all this, you know, Tech and Steel and all that. So, you know.
It's definitely relationship based because you as an artist have to be able to trust that producer's ear. You know what I mean? And if you don't trust their ear, because a lot of it, they probably sit in the studio together too, you know what I mean, and play beats as opposed to just sending beat packs. You know what I mean? So they probably in there cooking something up together. Ultimately, that's what it is, man. Like, do you really trust the producer's ear?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or are you going in looking for that?
Well, a lot of what happens to these artists is they don't want to advance their sound. So they're still searching for the sound that they created a long time ago.
Gospel.
That worked for them then.
Exactly. So they're not as open as a producer might be, or they might get with a producer and the producer's not making the exact same type of thing that they want because it doesn't sound like back then. So they ain't working with them.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody like Ninth Wonder can adapt. I mean, he's still doing it. He's still out here doing stuff. He can adapt and still fit the sound. Like he said, he in North Carolina, he lives around people that are fans of Smith & Wesson that are his age, obviously. So he's approached it as a fan. As a fan, if I'm listening to Smith & Wesson right now, how do I want it to sound?
Yeah.
So he came into it from the outside looking in as a fan and created something. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well, because you can get with a producer who has no idea what type of music that you want to produce or make and aren't that invested in even doing it. It's pretty much, here's a beat pack, listen to the beats, tell me what you want to do, and then we can go from there. They're not invested in actually curating and crafting a sound that still fits their old aesthetic to create a futuristic nostalgia, as he put it. So I think the artist and the producer have to be on the same track in order to create that.
Yeah, well, I think what you just stated is like the producer was an actual fan of the artist.
Correct.
You know what I mean? As opposed to, look, you came here to see me. You know what I mean? So
I'm the one selling all the records.
yeah.
I do think, though, like very specifically with the type of artists we are talking about, because I've ran into this issue too, because I historically have a particular sound that people generally know me for. And when I go left field on stuff, or if my sound has changed, which it kind of has in the last 6 or 7 years, I've incorporated a lot more live instrumentation, but also like I use synthesizers a lot more. And I've worked with people in the past that I know specifically want a very particular type of nostalgic sound for me. And even though I feel like I'm giving them an updated version that fits with where we're at right now, sometimes there's pushback on that. So sometimes I think it's the artists that they get kind of in their head, like, I want to bring this specialty thing back, not realizing that this is just the modern version of it, that it's, you know, like if the producer is still like evolving, because that's another thing too, because some people don't evolve, like some producers don't evolve, some artists don't evolve. And I think that's another piece to it. It's like there are a handful of producers out here who are making boom bap style beats influenced from the 90s, but they don't sound like they're from the 90s. And that's the stuff that I want to hear my favorite 90s rappers on. I don't want to hear Wu-Tang Clan sound on beats that sound like they were made in 2001 or 1997. I want to hear them on modern, updated versions from the producers that are from that ilk, that understand where it came from, but know how to make it slap in 2025. So,
yeah, no, I think Byron hit it right on the head when he picked up on the fact that Ninth said he was a fan of Smith & Wesson. You know, you can't almost get a certain level of futuristic nostalgia if you're not a fan of what these people did initially. You know, I think that's why the Common and Pete Rock album, to me, is excellent. You know, that's probably one of my favorite projects of last year.
Hey, my mama came and told me about that project.
So, you know, if you're a fan of Pete Rock, you know, if you're a fan of Common, like, you know, because last other Common albums, and I'm a Common fan, but you know, not a lot of replayability there. And but this one, the Auditorium Volume 1, when I see the Volume 1, I'm hoping there's a Volume 2. I'm hoping it's something like what Hit Boy did with Nas. And I think that's also, you know, another example. You know, clearly, you know, the things I've heard Hit Boy do for other people, it's not exactly the same thing that he did with Nas. And I think it's because, hey, I'm a fan of Nas. I want to, you know, get that stigma. I don't know if that's really something they thought of, because there's that lazy argument about Nas not being able to pick beats, which I think,
except it's been validated.
Yeah, it's definitely
because
been validated.
Nas actually confirmed it in an interview, and he said that he picked bad beats because he wanted people to pay attention to the rhymes.
okay.
I didn't think he had bad beats though.
No, he had a slew of
You should know better.
yeah, we know he had some bad beats. He's just a really good rapper.
Okay, well, I'm just
But you
saying.
also advocate for No Limit a lot too, right?
I do. A time period. It was a time of my life. You know what I mean? So I put them in that time of my life. So, but this is my argument about Ludacris. They're stuck in that time in my life. So when I hear those records, it takes me back to that time in my life, as opposed to like when I hear it now, I'm like, man, this still slaps. No, that was the record that I listened to back then, and I enjoyed it. That's why I feel Ludacris doesn't get the credit that he deserves sometimes, because
I agree.
It's just it's nostalgia at this point. Those records didn't age well.
No, I could see that.
Thanks to our partners. Dr. Coleman of Coleman Dental is our go-to dentist. He's a longtime Indianapolis arts and music supporter located right in Broad Ripple. Our good friends at Indie CD and Vinyl operate one of the best record stores in North America. Shop new and used in their site or visit them in person. And the best way to support the New Old Heads is to visit our Patreon and become a member. All details on newoldheads.com. The streets from before is not the streets of today. Read My Soul. Creator on YouTube. Check him out. He does a lot of hip hop and footwear related content, but mostly hip hop of late. He recently had a video about how hip hop is more conscious than street.
The streets of today, which I made a video about this that ruffles some feathers, the streets of today are not the streets of yesterday. The street dudes that funded hip hop back in the days, they did not want to go on Vlad. They did not want to tell you that they were in the car and passed to the next dude that knocked Tupac off. They don't want to Keefy D themselves. They don't want to Vlad 22 themselves. They don't want to AR Ab themselves. That wasn't what they wanted to do. They were streets, and they kept it street behind the scenes. The streets of yesteryear are not the streets of today. And I will keep saying that. There were codes and there were guidelines back in the days, and you did not see the street dudes. They were not trying to be celebrities. They were not trying to be in videos. They were not trying to be on podcasts. They stayed out the way. And most of those dudes will tell you today, get out of the streets.
Why do we think today's street rappers are so different than street rappers of the past? Or are they?
I mean, you can go ahead.
Oh, no. I mean, first of all, when he talks about the street dudes of yesteryear, there wasn't YouTube. You know, there wasn't all these avenues. You know, I think when you kind of see the documentaries, you know, the things. Remember Don Diva magazine? You know, and
Murder Dog.
Yeah, Murder. You know, I think Murder Dog was still just more Southern
Hip-hop,
music,
yeah.
but Don Diva was, you know, crime. Feds.
Yeah.
These were crime magazines.
Feds. That's what I was thinking.
You know, there's all these things about how, other than like the real Rick Ross. Shout out to him. I met him. Another coach's all-star. You know, he wasn't flashy at all. He didn't have the crazy cars, but these, you know, some of these, when you see stories about these other street people, especially from New York, they got the most ridiculous cars, stuff you could only get in Germany. They had the flashiest clothes. They'd be in the club throwing money. Everyone didn't have an HD camera at their disposal, and there was no YouTube. I'm not saying that they would have done the same things that we're seeing now, but you know, there was still a level of flashiness and unnecessary attention seeking that street people have always kind of been involved in.
That's real.
Now there are some codes, like, because now I have also seen the other side where I know people who move in the streets, they don't even like for people to take pictures of them. Like there was a cat, like I said, I'm not going to mention any names because I know better, who I'd see always, you know, take care of me. And when I was working at a club downtown, but if somebody came around with a camera, he didn't even want to be in a picture. So there are people who move differently. But I think when you talk about, don't Keefy D yourself, if it was 30 years ago and there were same apparatuses as far as like Art of Dialogue or Vlad or Adam 22 or whoever you think just likes to get on whatever platform there is, if those things were around them, there'd be the same people who don't have the foresight to think, hey, maybe I shouldn't reminisce on criminal behavior on the internet that can be used as some sort of document against me in court. So I think there's always been this flashy element to people who move in the streets. There's some people who move in silence you'd never know. Like I said, there's a difference between Meech and Terry. But, you know, and so the Meeches of the world, who, whenever there's been a level of crime, it's hard for them to be quiet. In the movie American Gangster, when he said, look, you know, the loudest person in the room is the weakest person in the room, you know? So when there was a difference between Frank Lucas and Nicky Barnes until Nicky Barnes was on the cover of a magazine. You know, and this is back in the 70s. Yeah. You know, so this element of people who live in the underworld, going out of their way to seek attention, which ultimately, results in their demise, whether it be someone gets shot or someone has to go to jail. It's always been there. It's just so amplified now because of all the platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as far as the platforms, because me and my friends actually talk about if YouTube and things like that existed when we were kids, we either been very rich and popular right now or we'd be in jail because of some of the shit that we were doing. But as for, I understand the difference in what's going on, though, because being in the streets has always been something. Use the flashiness kind of as your trophy that you made it, and you're classified as hood rich. I mean, you got a nice car, you got Coogee sweaters, you got thick herringbone necklaces, you riding on D's and Vogues. You know what I'm saying? It's always been a flashy connotation to if you made it in the streets. When you talked about Frank Lucas, what got him popped was going to that fight in that big mink coat and hat, being flashy. But the difference is I can be seen as being flashy and I'm showing my money off by the things that I had and I've acquired. But there was a code that people lived by back then too, so to speak, as far as being a gangster and not telling and doing things of that nature. And it still happened. People still told and people still were dealt with in that way, shape, or form, but whatever. But now it's almost passe, or it's cool for you to go and talk about it after it's been so many years. I'm gonna get on here and talk about everything that happened, like the girl that supposedly got killed by King Von, her brother. He's always online talking about stories about King Von, his sister, and other shit that happened in Chicago or whatnot. And he hasn't gotten in trouble for it, but they almost made it cool to do it and talk about it. And then even in the records, people talking about having bodies and smoking on this and that. Some of them didn't commit the crimes, but talking about the crimes alludes to you doing the crime.
I wonder how much these media platforms, such as like the Adam 20, the No Jumpers, and what academics started off doing with the Wars Chirac stuff, and Vlad, and highlighting this and kind of making celebrity out of this, kind of contributes to how this culture has kind of changed throughout time. Yeah, but how the culture around it has kind of, it's manifested from like flashiness in person or whatever to like, well, I can take it up a scale.
Yeah, it's all attention seeking.
Yeah, I love it. Just like, and then it's okay to, so like when the whole situation with what's his name, Tekashi 6ix9ine,
right?
We know he was involved in all of that stuff, and once he got in trouble, he started singing, and nothing happened to him. Nothing. So that ain't street. So he's not. Even the people that are involved in the streets ain't as street as they were back in the day. That wouldn't have. There's no way he could have got on there and talked about that shit back then. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of instances, I think, today that happened that would never happen back then. Or it wouldn't have made it that long. It would already have been resolved. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's more trying to shop the image of being street and trying to get clout off being street. And not caring about what happens because you feel like, okay, I got money, I can fight a case. They still got to prove it. Even though I'm talking about this shit, I could have been involved but removed from it. So I think people just feel Teflon almost to everything.
I think it was an evolution. Like, so what Jay Moore said at one point in time, where the person in the street funded the artist, you know what I mean, and allowed them to do what it was that they did. And then
Too Short talks about this. He's on his whole rollout now. He talked about how like that's how his initial recordings were funded. Yeah,
and then you get into the 2000s with P and Birdman, and it's not only can I fund it, but I can do it too. You know what I mean? So like, not only can I'm the artist now. You know what I mean? So.
Well, Eazy was the artist.
Yeah,
too.
Eazy.
Yeah.
Begrudgingly. Yes, he became the artist, yes.
So once you get into that, then it's like, oh, okay, that's how I clean this money up. Is I'm the artist now, and I'm coming from the back seat, and I'm stepping out in the front, and then that's evolved into niggas telling who their whole life story on Vlad, et cetera, you know what I mean? So it's just progressively gotten worse. It's always been there. It's just gotten worse.
But to your point, That's true, but they knew how to do it the right way. So fast forward to now, and you have these artists that don't know how to leave the street alone.
Yeah.
You know, so you're still doing street shit,
even though you
definitely have all of these eyes on you. You know what I'm saying? With Lil Durk. That's crazy that you would be involved in shit like that, especially in your position. Now, even if you are, if you got some kind of rank or whatever, you shouldn't be handling any of that stuff anyway. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like how it's supposed to go.
Well,
like,
they said he was funded it. But the thing is, you should be far removed.
You should be
from
far.
that.
There's no way that anybody should be knowing that this is what you own.
Using your own credit cards is probably not the move.
Yeah, that doesn't go like that. So I think people are just too oblivious to how many eyes being on you, the way that you should move. There's no way that you should still be moving like that. Same thing happened with Young Thug. He was able to get off, but I mean, come on, we know he was involved in a lot of that shit. I mean, he never said that he wasn't. He just said it wasn't a gang. But you got other people repping your record label, so to speak, that are moving like a gang. You know what I'm saying? You can't have that and still be making the money. Like, people just feel like they can't be touched once they get money. Most of the time when you get money, that's when the most eyes and attention are going to be on you anyway, because they don't want you to have that money. So you got to be careful.
God bless.
Yeah. The phrase conscious rapper is one with this, is like a phrase that historically has been kind of frowned upon, depending on different circles, right? Don't call me a conscious rapper.
Like backpack.
Yeah. Where does that contentiousness come from, do you think?
So they called the conscious rapper the backpack rapper, essentially. The conscious rapper was supposed to be the rapper that didn't necessarily rap about street shit. But when you break it down, they were rapping about street shit. They just rapped it in a way that wasn't as simplistic for you to break it down or understand. I've made this example a few times on the show, actually. Like, Jay-Z is considered a conscious rapper, essentially, right?
You think so?
He is. I mean, if you listen to his lyrics,
I understand where you're coming from.
If you listen to his lyrics, he's a conscious rapper. Like, if you want to put him in that box,
but he's not viewed as one.
He's not viewed as one. Raekwon can be viewed as a conscious rapper. Yep. But these two rappers are rapping about the exact same thing that Master P was talking about.
Yeah. It's
just the delivery of how they put it. So it's almost like books that you're reading in, like, let's fast. I don't want to be that, you know what I'm saying, silly and say like a Cat in the Hat book, but like, say some books you're reading in like the 4th or 5th grade versus some shit you're reading sophomore or junior year. It might have some of the same similarities in it, but this has a lot more words,
more
and a
digestible.
lot more, you know what I'm saying? It describes a little more before you get to the end of it versus you got a thin book like this.
So with that, is there a distinct difference between conscious and street rappers if the street rappers are talking about their reality? And I think that's kind of what you're saying here with the Jay-Z mention, because technically they are conscious.
Yeah.
Nas, the same way.
Yes.
Like these are super conscious rappers. They're talking about the reality of stuff. I think when you talk about non-conscious rappers, you really have to get into some stuff to where people are just kind of mumbling incoherently, or they're
kind of semantics.
Man, conscious rappers it got to a point where that would just mean you ain't got no hoes.
Is that what it means?
And you don't sell any records.
Yeah, that's it. Like
Common would probably beg
a conscious rapper.
Okay, but it's still Common and doesn't have one platinum plaque. And that's not to diss and say there's the validity in his art because
he done dated a whole lot of women.
Yes. But, he got a whole lot of checks from other places. He's been in movies. He got Microsoft. So there have been things that have balanced it out. Because trust me, if you wanted to give me, say, I'll be the Yin Yang Twins or Common, at one point, everybody would have took being the Yin Yang Twins.
Yeah.
I'm
saying if you're talking about from a commercial and monetary, I wouldn't want to be the Yin Yang Twins. But if you're talking about where their careers were at, if they were on the radio 24/7, they sold millions of records. And then you're talking about, Common, who the perception
I'm gonna take the Common pill.
He out there wearing crocheted gloves, and he's out there like can't even fill up an arena.
Yeah,
there are people who saw that and were like, I would have taken the road much more traveled.
I don't know.
And maybe that's
cool.
what I'm saying.
I think I'm cool. He dated Erykah Badu, and you got to add all of that stuff.
We're seeing it now. We're seeing it now.
But
I think
if you would have said, "Oh, who do you want to be?" This I just happen to say Yang Yang Twins, but if whoever was on the radio and really popping at that time, who might have been a one hit or 1 year wonder, if you would have taken that at the time, or you would have taken.
You're being disrespectful to the Yin Yang Twins.
I'm not. I look, man. It was
just because you backtracked. It was right.
They were. Yes, they're definitely played. But if you would have taken that, or you would have taken Electric Circus era Common.
I mean, I think
it's the same period.
Roughly, yeah.
I think realistically, the conscious thing, when we boil it down to it, it was just a way to make fun of people for quote unquote not being intelligent enough. Or that's kind of what it was. That's kind of where it always went to. It's like, oh, you're not conscious enough, or I like conscious rappers. I don't like these rappers that are.
That's from the conscious side.
That's what I mean, from the conscious side. That's from that side. And the other side was kind of like, y'all say too many words. You ain't got no hoes.
Yeah, you just be talking too much. You ain't got no money. You ain't got no hoes.
You still driving the car you got.
The conscious rappers was the hoteps, huh?
Yes. I mean, but I can make a argument that Black Star's definition and redefinition, those are street records. Mm-hmm. When you listen to the content. Thing, though.
A lot of these conscious rappers had street records.
That's why I don't think it's synonymous.
Yeah, so it kind of like, because that's the first I had ever heard was you name somebody conscious because I ain't got no hoes.
Yeah.
That's wild. I ain't
or
know
the
that
kind of 304s that they have. They might,
they stink.
They might, use crystals as deodorant.
They don't use deodorant.
They wear head wraps and they don't know about nobody's got a perm. You know what I'm saying?
Fans.
No, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that's what they were saying.
What the perception.
That was the perception of that.
Well, yeah, all right.
Wearing.
I always thought. All right, so
this could get real disrespectful.
So let me talk about some albums that I bought at the exact same time. That some could be considered conscious and some could be considered street or whatever. So, Dead Prez, Let's Get Free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conscious album.
Absolutely.
Very much
It's
so.
conscious to me because it's political.
They're like talking about like communists, like social market.
I mean,
Marxists.
they talking about some shit up.
Yeah.
But not really either. The Mind Sex was on there too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Fire album.
Yeah, but they want to have an incense and you can cook up some croutons.
We ain't got to take our clothes off. He wasn't trying to get the butt. You know what I mean? Look, I want to have mind sex. He
want to burn some incense and talk about it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So
but
that's conscious.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, around the same time that came out, a mystical album.
Yeah, shake that ass.
But watch yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Because I came here with in my hand.
Yeah.
Don't make me leave here with my in your ass.
And then in the same,
be cool.
That's why he's in jail now.
Same year, I get a Jay-Z album.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, all right, so if I got to separate all three of those albums, of course, Dead Prez automatically goes into the conscious record pile because of content-wise. Jay-Z's content is not the same as Mystical's content, right? It's a little...
less
frivolous. He's still telling stories.
Right.
Essentially, conscious means telling a story, painting a picture, so to speak.
I think he's just speaking on your reality or speaking on exactly. That's what I say. Like, I think all these, I don't think like the same thing. I don't think they're diametrically opposed. I don't think it's one side is street rapper and the other side is conscious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the fallacy.
So how do you create that difference then? Because everybody that's street are not, I mean, they're street, but the way that they're telling their stories is still poetry in motion, essentially. To me, that's conscious rap.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion.
I think it's both. I just think that the term conscious rap this is why it's such a pretentious term, because it suggests that certain stuff isn't conscious, isn't intellectual enough to be considered, have thought into it. And I just don't think that's the case.
No, it ain't. But I mean, there's a lot of party album or party records that weren't created for you to think about it.
Sure.
It's literally made for you to party and have a good time.
Yeah. So like a Yin Yang Twins album is not conscious.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, in that particular, it's made for one specific intention.
Wait till you see my... I'm going that up.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've talked.
But you could even argue that that's conscious to a degree.
You could.
You know, I'm just saying. Like,
I think he actually said what the definition of conscious was
in the beginning of his
video.
Yeah.
And it kind of groups a whole lot of things together.
Yeah.
And it goes to his point, or him saying he thought, or his thought of conscious rap was you just didn't get no brides.
That was the connotation behind.
Yeah. I can.
But it's the same as what they say about Kendrick and Cole. You put their music on, you scaring the hoes. That's like the Drake Kendrick stuff. Like,
no, I mean, it's look, I just remember at one point I would have if I had a young lady in the car, it was a different vibe. You know, if I had a mixtape, you know, back when we had tapes, okay, this is what I'm going to play when it's just me. Yeah. But this is what I'm going to play if I have, you know, some young ladies with me. You know what I'm saying? Because I know they don't want to hear about all that red, black, and green. No, they're not trying to hear all that. It's just real, you know. But I just think there's also this weird line of demarcation where I think we've started to really split up as far as what we consider to be street rap and what we consider to be conscious rap. And it was July 2nd, 1996, when Stakes is High came out and Nas put out I Am. And it was like people, because I Am was a much more commercial, what you call street rap, but at the same time, like there are people who considered Nas to be a conscious artist. He had records on there that was definitely speaking to that part of hip hop. But De La Soul, like they threw out a bomb when they said, look, I'm tired of bitches shaking asses. I'm tired of Versace glasses. Like everything that was going on at the time that was popular and fly and fun, they made a song called Stakes is High about it. You know, and so it was almost like this is kind of where we started to like kind of split away from each other as a hip hop community.
They did the same thing.
You know, and the thing is, like, apparently, like, Biggie was very, because he felt like they were talking about him. And he was very, you know, he's like, man, I love the Roots. And like this is way back in the day with fax machines and whatnot. And Questlove had wrote it, like, decided he's going to write an op-ed. And he was literally writing it the night that Biggie got killed. You know, because he was like, no, that's not what we were trying to do, and we're trying to do this. But I mean, I think there's been a misunderstanding between the two sides for so long. You know, even though they're doing roughly the same thing, depending on who you're talking about. Like, you know, I just remember like Pimp C talking about how, you know, they were label mates, I think, at one point with Brand Nubian, you know, and it's like, yo, I got love for them, you know, in the song Country Cousins that Pimp C did with Talib Kweli. All these people are fans of each other. That's the wild thing. At least a lot of them are. You know, some people, they just like to shake ass. They're not trying to hear none about the revolution.
But I think that's more accurate of a, you know, a separation of it. It's like the people that want to shake ass, or let's just call it the more commercial approach, like approaching it from a strictly commercial, like that's the intent, right? As opposed to putting care into the thing that you're doing, whether that be talking about what's going on in your life from this angle or this angle, no matter if you're wearing a backpack or you're not wearing a backpack or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, but you know what's in them backpacks?
Exactly.
Drugs and guns.
For sure.
Those discussions.
But
essentially, man, it's like it's all the same, man. It's just dumbed down versions. You know what I mean? I think that's what you were saying with like the Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat stuff. You know what I mean? It's just more palatable to the person that doesn't really want to have to dissect every day.
Like people do considered conscious at one point in time.
Yeah. People do that with movies now. You know what I mean? Like you hear that with people talking about how Sinners is just like, I want to go to the movie and just enjoy a movie. I don't want to have to listen to all these breakdowns of what he meant with this, that, and that. Okay, that's on you. Yeah. Just want to go watch people get killed.
Yeah, just carnage, man.
People really enjoy surface level entertainment on all
reality TV,
on everything. It doesn't matter what it is. They want surface level. They don't want to have to think about what they're doing, listening to, and being entertained by.
It's just
mostly people want to just have that instant rush of dopamine or wherever releases whenever they listen to the music. And I think that has a lot to do with the classification of regular versus a conscious as well. I don't want to be schooled by music. So to me, listening to some music that's trying to school me or tell me a story or something, I'm good on that. I just want to listen to something to make me feel good in the moment. Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with the separation as well.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Like, because I remember at one point in time, like crossing over was a bad thing in hip hop. Like they used to shit on Hammer. You know what I mean? But then everybody wanted to be like Hammer.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the
Because
same
he
way.
made money.
I mean, the same way, like everybody, like, oh yeah, anything that's not puffy is real hip hop, and it's like, but at the same time, you saw people doing their version of what Puffy was doing musically,
Hitmaker and Busta Rhymes.
So everybody was like, wait a minute, I want a #1 album, I want a BMW or whatever was the thing to buy at that time. Like, I just don't want to be sitting here I just don't want to be down here smoking blunts and playing video games with my friends. Like, you can't. I don't ever fault people for if they have a formula where they can do something that's commercially viable. The same way as like, look, Sinners is dope, but but I understand, like, if the next thing that Ryan Coogler does is a Marvel movie, if he's on to do the next Black Panther, I'm not going to be mad at that, because there's a way for him to make something that's going to generate $700 million as opposed to 100. I
guess it just depends on how you look at it. It's like the artistic approach. It's like, to me that's the line. It's like from an artist myself. Like, it's, if I'm approaching my art that I'm making from an angle of how can I maximize my profit on this versus how can I create something that is who I am and can embody the things that I do, to me that's the line. And I think all this other stuff sometimes it just became easy to play one side against the other. We should stop classifying everything as hip hop. So on the recent Culture United 8 hosted by Justin Hunt, Glasses Malone and Wayno had a good conversation back and forth about classifying certain black artists as hip hop and if they should potentially be classified as something else. So here's the clip, and then we'll talk about it a little further.
I really think we have to stop classifying everything as hip hop for some false sense of it. It's okay for brothers to go out and make rock music and use rap. Like, I hear a take on rock music by brothers.
I think that there's a distinction between country or rock, but I think that hip hop is also not a one size fits all, because there's so much hip hop that we could go back to when we was growing up. At the time, might have not fit the norm, and they became what it is that we consider hip hop.
Just because a brother rap don't make it hip hop.
So what makes it hip hop?
It's a street urban cultural take on art. But I think what we're witnessing, Wayno, is a lot of brothers get after rock and roll. They're not concerned in this space. And it's kind of obvious. They're going to get something else that we lost. When I look at Travis, I can feel like he's going to get something that we lost. It don't feel like I'm listening to hip hop. That's not to say I can't hear the 808 drums. It's not to say I can't hear the rap influence. It's not to say I can't hear his influences from all kind of rappers. But that little dude has a lot more. Same for Uzi, same for Playboy Cardi. Those guys are they are really special. And they're doing something really unique that we're trying to put in this. And I think it's obvious when you look at the appeal that it's much unique than just this.
So yeah, that was Glasses.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So Wayno's argument was essentially that some of the sonics of hip hop changes throughout time, and there are a lot of elements that overlap between the music from someone like Cardi, Uzi Vert, Travis Scott, and that they make, as opposed to something a little bit more traditionally sounding to hip hop. Can you guys speak maybe on the sonic differences, and if you think that there should be a distinction between those two entities?
Travis literally growls on the mic, like, with auto-tune. Like, when I first heard that, I was like, it's different, but that shit hard than a bitch. You know what I mean? Like, because it was something that I had never heard before, and it made him stand out to me. Right. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. At the time, I thought it was hip hop. I will say that. But it has evolved into something way different. You know what I mean? Same with when I first saw Uzi, I was like, man, what?
Right.
Yeah. The whole aesthetic was rock star.
I feel like some people feel like it's a negative thing to call certain artists maybe not hip hop. But I don't think that it necessarily is a negative thing. If you are embodying or creating your own type of sound that doesn't really aesthetically fit something outside of a couple small influences and the fact that they happen to be black artists, black art is more than hip hop. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I feel like that sometimes is missed, and I don't know.
What's going on with that is it's almost like hip hop has become the generic word for everything black. As
Black
far
youth
as
culture. Yes,
yeah,
it's
black
only
youth
hip
culture
hop.
is only hip hop, and it's the shows that have nothing to do with hip hop. It's the music that has nothing to do with hip hop. It's just classified as hip hop.
Tyler talked about this in the Grammy thing.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I really don't understand that.
Lazy.
It's very-
It's
It's
lazy.
society, essentially, because people that don't really know what hip hop is just assume everything is hip hop, and that's just not the case. But even some of these artists go as far to be like, "Well, I'm not a rapper." You're not a Cardi or a Travis Scott or a Uzi. You just want to be classified in your own little bubble. That's cool. It's cute. You know what I'm saying? Well, essentially, you're a rapper. You know what I'm saying? You're rapping. What they're doing is adding other elements to their product, so to speak, the artist that he mentioned, which creates something different. And that kind of leads to the discussion of, should hip hop or this music be classified as something different altogether? Because with them using all the rock and roll elements or the rage music, so to speak, Ye tried to claim the whole shit, by the way. He said it wouldn't, without him, they wouldn't exist, but we already know how that goes.
And even like hyper pop sound stuff, which is kind of Cardi-esque.
Yeah.
It just feels like it just feels different, you know.
It does feel different, and I think what it does is it awakens a different type of fan, a fan that is actually missing something, and they're missing that genre of music that they might have been into if those type of people were actually creating music now, which is like the grunge, the rock, the heavy metal type of stuff. You don't hear about any of those artists coming out anymore. I'm pretty sure they still exist.
Yeah, probably.
I know they do. Yeah.
They're making around a music that's kind of a melting pot of a lot of those genres all together and handing it to people. And that's what makes them stand out, is because they're using all of those elements, and they don't look aesthetically. They don't look like the typical hip hop or rapper as far as how they present themselves as well.
Like you said, man, you broke down 3 different segments, like grunge, punk, all of those different genres
Heavy
of
metal,
rock.
yeah.
I think it's the same thing with like hip hop. Like, and the thing is we have to call it something else. You know
But
what I mean?
they did call it something else. That was what was cool about it.
With the rock stuff?
Yeah, with rock,
Yeah.
they classified them as different things. This is grunge. This is, like you said,
It's like from the family tree of rock and roll, but it's not rock and roll almost.
But is that on them or is that on us? You know what I mean? Because we haven't found something to call
Trap,
that,
swag,
you know?
rap. I mean, you know,
I agree with all of those. We've done that with those, but as far as like
Booty
Travis,
Shake, taking it back to that, you know,
horrorcore. You know, what
is
I mean?
it rage? Is that what they want to call it? Is it rage?
That is fitting. I have heard that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you would call it. You know what I mean? I don't.
It's definitely different.
Yeah, it's different. It sometimes, I don't know.
And that's we don't say that in a bad connotation.
No,
you know what I'm
no.
saying?
But I think a lot of times when this conversation comes up, it appears like it almost appears elitist to say like, oh, that's
exactly
not
what it is.
That's not hip hop.
Mhm.
You know, but the thing is this, you know, when I say that, I'm not saying it from an elitist place. I'm saying it like it just doesn't classify. It doesn't seem to fit in this particular grouping that it is in, although it does feel similar, you know. And then, you know, I'm not even a huge fan of groupings as it is. I understand the purpose of groupings, but like, if we are going to group it as such, like, it does feel like something different. So, and I have students that make all sorts of interesting styles of music that I have no idea what it is that they make. You know what I'm saying? You know, like this style of like mumbling on a track, but like it's aesthetic, but there are lyrics there at the same time, and it's all distorted, and like it's all about the vibe, but it's kind of rapping, but it's not really rapping. You know, it's like, it's just different.
Emo.
It's just different. Yeah. I mean, there's elements of like Terry said, there's just elements of all of this stuff in there, and it's almost like it's genreless in a way, because it's drawing influences from hip hop, from different styles of rap music, from from Kanye's stuff that he was doing on Yeezus and the stuff, you know, like it's drawing a bunch of influences And it's like there's nowhere to like classify it, and I almost feel like that's kind of the point.
It's the old dirty bastard of hip hop.
Well, you know,
There's no father to the style.
Yeah.
There's always been something where you were like, okay, technically they're rapping, but do we want to put it in the hip hop or rap category? You know, like,
But are they always rapping though? I don't think they're always rapping.
oh, think about remember the group Technotronic?
Mm-hmm.
You
Pump
know,
up the jam.
yeah, you know, Ya Kid K, there was the MC in that group. Oh, she was rapping.
But
Was
not
that
all
hip hop?
But not all rap is hip hop, right?
Right.
So,
You know, just like
Those are jock jams.
Yeah. I mean, just like you got to understand, like, you know, and sort of where sometimes people just move it into a different place when it's convenient for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people don't remember this, but Milli Vanilli's first single, Girl, You Know It's True, charted on the rap chart. You know, the newly
Because
mentioned
there was a rap
chart.
on there.
Exactly. So they're just like, oh, there's a rap on it, so it's a rap song. You know, when it was CNC Music Factory, you know, Here Comes Freedom Williams. Technically, that's rapping. It's a full rap song.
Unfortunately,
I mean, look, it was of the time,
it was.
but at the same time, like, I don't think anyone who was
I lost
who actually
credibility.
died in the wool hip hop was thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to put this in on my mixtape.
Nobody that was in the rap and hip hop back then classified any of those songs as rap
but
and hip hop.
I mean, but you know, once again, the element is there, and so you can see where people would get confused when we're trying to differentiate it from everything else.
that was just pop music that had raps on it.
Yeah, I knew he wasn't a rapper when I saw him on Red Shoe Diaries.
But
I
that
knew it
came
the
later.
first time I heard it. I knew the first time I heard them songs, I was like, these don't sound like rap to me.
hey man, Fred Durst was
As a
rapping.
kid,
Yeah.
well, he was rapping, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could listen to Korn, and you know, you know, for those of you who are familiar with that, we're like, okay, the structure of what technically might be considered rap is here, but this isn't hip hop.
So maybe that brings up another question. So how close culturally is a Lil Uzi Vert, a Playboy Cardi, and a Travis Scott to someone like Kendrick Lamar or a Sky Zoo or an Odyssey or a Meek Mill?
I mean, they can be in the same conversation because when we try to pinpoint things as culture as well, it's like, what do you define as culture? How can you say that one is culturally close and where the other one isn't? Especially based on how one was influenced. Because who's to say what artist influenced him to make this sound?
Right.
That doesn't mean he's no less culturally involved or inspired than a Kendrick Lamar. Just because
I'm not
it
even
sounds
speaking
different.
from like a
Well, I'm
hip
not
hop
talking about you.
I know, but I'm not even speaking from like a hip hop, like trying to center hip hop. I'm just saying, are they culturally connected in that way? I mean, to what you're saying. I mean,
yeah, still.
I mean, I think
would
they
say
are too.
Still are
I think they are
culturally
too.
Connected. It's just a different sound. It's a different part of the culture. It's like it's a different food. It's a different dish. You can have a variety of different foods, but it's all still culturally the same.
Would you call it more, when you say it's all the same culture, would you say it's more black culture as opposed to like hip hop culture?
No,
I don't know
I wouldn't say so.
because I mean,
only person that stands out. Only person I can say that to is Kendrick, maybe.
you think his is more black culture versus
In his music,
Travis Scott?
yes, definitely.
Because of the fans?
Because of content.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Kind of goes back to the conscious.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Travis music for the most part is all party and bullshit, respectfully. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to tell you nothing really about his personal life or anything like that. It's just, look, I'm out, I'm having a good time. You should have a good time. I'm doing drugs and I got hoes.
Come do them with me.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Let's rage. His concert is a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all, I think, like, so I listen to these artists all differently.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's mood music at the end of the day.
pretty much, man. You know what I mean? Like, if I want to amp myself up to go party, I'm going to throw on some Travis. I might not necessarily do that with no Kendrick, even though I can.
Right.
That's not really what's the message behind his music, though, most times.
It depends. I mean, sometimes you want the calm before the storm. Jordan was listening to Kenny G before he went out and
Kenny
busted
Lattimore.
people.
Let's not put Kenny G on Michael.
Probably was somebody he was listening to too, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
And he'd go out there and bust your ass on the court. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it depends. I might pull up to a joint playing some R&B and go in there and play all basement trap music. You know what I'm saying? So
pull up with
I've
some
definitely
Wham,
done that.
You know?
yeah, hey, I'll pull up on some Michael McDonald at any given time and go in there and it'd be a whole different mood than what I was listening to in the car. So I can't really pinpoint if I would say one is more culturally invested than the other. I can say I think Kendrick's message is intentionally aimed at
the darkies.
Damn, man.
Wow. I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
Just ruin that whole look.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Better bleep that out.
It's definitely aimed at black youth and black empowerment, things of that nature. Whereas a Travis Scott is aimed at everybody, and everybody's welcome to Astroworld, to turn up, let's have fun, let's go crazy, let's do everything on the cusp of killing yourself.
And maybe
still
die.
make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a difference as far as that's concerned.
I enjoy all of their music just the same, though.
And I think generally speaking, like if we're going to look at this fairly, it's not fair really to classify any artist into any type of category. It's really just something for us to do as consumers. So we, as humans, like to put things in categories. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. But there's definitely a place for that particular style of music, and it definitely lives. And I think it definitely pollinates in different areas and different people that consume it for different reasons. But
yeah, I mean, I guess R&B is still called rhythm and blues. All of it ain't blues.
Yeah, because I was thinking about like it's a whole segment of quote unquote blues now that is more hip hop. But it made it palatable for me to listen to it. You know what I mean?
South blues.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, but it got 808s and trap beats, trap drums to it. But it's still blues. You know what I mean?
Blues.
So, and I really enjoyed it. It's because it's not my parents' blues.
Exactly.
It's not my grandparents' blues.
It's not a banjo or
Yeah.
a guitar crying on the track with you. It's more upbeat. They're still talking about
the same
she
stuff.
on some bullshit.
Yep.
But it just sounds different.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like what? King George. Antonio, whatever dude's name, man. Like all of the dude 803 Fresh, that Boots on the Ground is blues music.
That is definitely blues music.
okay.
Yeah.
No, if we ain't got nothing else, then I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave these kids alone, I guess.
Leave them alone.
Let's see here.
Or just open your palette up a little bit more to understand why some of these things have influenced these artists to do different things.
Yeah, but at the same time, like as we watch this video, like I actually kind of agree with what Glasses was saying.
No, I do agree.
When you look at it from that lens,
Man, I agree 100% with Glasses, man. It's not hip hop, but to Wayno's credit, it has elements.
it's like you don't want to diminish what they're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like you are when you say that.
And being
So,
dismissive. That's also really, I mean, that goes back to the previous conversation we had.
Yep. Shouts to y'all for watching the new podcast.
Yeah.
And shouts to Terry and Jay Diff and Jay Moore and Jay and Byron and Brother to the Night and Maja 7th. Become a Patreon member to get the full 2 hours of this because you're going to want it. And bye.
Yeah.